You're now listening to Shoot the Sit with Savant and Silky.
I want to kick things off and ask you personally, what does being an adult mean to you?
Man, that's a good question. I kind of feel like being an adult for me is kind of just handling your business, having a level of autonomy, definitely paying your own bills for sure.
Yeah.
But I really feel like if I really want to dig deep, I feel like adulting or like true adulthood really kicks in when you start to have what's the word I'm trying to look for? Starts with an A.
Aptitude, attitude, altitude.
No, bro, we're not flying. What the hell?
Hey, you said it starts with an A, so I just started throwing A words out there.
It's like acceptance, accountability. That's the word I want to use.
Okay. Nice.
So adulting is top tier when you really have solid accountability for yourself.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think I agree with you on that front. But to add on to that piece, or to piggyback off what you were saying, I think, at least for me, adulting has a bit of a feeling to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are things that are standard, right? But I can't tell you how many times I felt like a child in a grown man's body up until a certain point where I was like, you know what? I feel like an adult now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, working, paying bills, doing my own thing, cooking, taking care of myself, moving to a different state, all of that stuff didn't make me feel like an adult. Nor, I'm pretty sure by standard it feels like an adult. But beyond that, I interpret adulting being a kind of a feeling when you just kind of, where something just clicks. Now, what that feeling is, I have to dive in a little bit deeper for you as we progress through the episode. But you brought up something real interesting that I wanted to ask you about. Accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's been a word that's been going around since COVID started, with this whole gender wars thing. Do you feel like holding yourself accountable is a requirement to be an adult?
Oh, absolutely. Because kind of to your point, like I definitely wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I turned 30 last June. Jesus, I don't even know my
Happy
own birthday month. You can tell I'm old. No, but like all in my 20s, like I felt like an adult, like almost like by definition, just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm no longer 18, 19. I don't have a teen in my number right now. I'm 20. I'm an adult. It's like when I was in college, I felt like an adult, but it wasn't really until I hit the age of like 29, 30 that I actually felt like, yo, I'm an adult now. Because I had a moment where I felt like a void of my life. And I'm gonna get deep on you too. Like, all right, so let's just say in the typical life that a person has, you're a child who's told what to do and how to live and be a human being. Mm-hmm. And then you become like a preteen, teenager, and that's when you start to come into yourself, know what you like, what you don't like, but you're still kind of dictated what you have to do. You have to go. You have to get a job because you need to start building your resume, or whatever the case. It's not really based off money. It's a societal thing. You got to go get your first job. Then you got to finish high school. And it's just like, well, the people who are just like, well, man, you don't actually have to finish high school. I mean, you don't, but on the standard level, you do.
Yeah.
Then after that, you either go to college or you join the military or do Job Corps. But either way, the average person don't typically like lollygag, right? They go into the next phase of life. And then again, with that, let's just matter of fact, I'm just gonna instead of making it just complicated, I'm just gonna go just standard expectations of life. So after high school, you go to college. After college, you're supposed to get a spouse or a partner. Somewhere in between then, you get a house, you get your car, you pay your car off, you eventually pay your house off, you have children, all that good stuff. And it's like, but then what happens after that? Well, you're supposed to progress in your career or find a really good paying job and then eventually retire. But it's just like, there's a momentum shift. Like, I think about it as like being fired out of a cannon. Like when you're born, you're like fired out of a cannon. You have all this momentum propelling you forward. And then there's a certain point where you just kind of like floating in the air. And that's where I felt like I was at. I was like, okay, now what? Like, I have no more forward motion pushing me forward. And I had a moment where I was just looking at my life like, what now? What next? What do I do? Like, because for me, I'm married. I have a child. My car is paid off. I got a house. My credit scores look good, so it's like, okay, what do I do next? Like, I mean, my job is like decent, but the job economy right now is not really the greatest. And I got an audio engineering degree, but I'm not really using that, so it's not like my career is like,
who uses those anymore anyway?
Exactly. But it's just like, it was at that point where I had to have a certain level of accountability. Like, like nobody else is going to tell me what to do. There's not a default plan that's laid in front of me. At this point, I have to choose what I want to do next. I have to, decide what's going to happen next. Like, I can't depend on my parents to give me more guidance. I can't depend on, let's say, a mentor or something to tell me what to do. I have to decide what to do. And on top of that, let's just say at this point in time, if I have any baggage, trauma, emotional stuff, whatever, like that I want to blame other people for, or like, oh, I'm this way because of this. But it's like, okay, but I have to have a certain level of accountability within myself in order for me to really, I guess, unlock my full potential, go to my next stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you said,
nobody's gonna push you forward besides you. You get to a certain age and you gotta rely on yourself to make decisions where you can get advice and mentorship from others. But beyond that, though, I definitely think holding yourself accountable is a requirement in a world full of people that don't hold themselves accountable for anything. Right? You start to, for me, accountability didn't really set in until later for me.
Okay.
And I mean, like 20. It was the moment that I moved to Chicago where everything kind of slowly started to set in for me, right? And
how old were you at that age?
At that age, I was 26.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to turn 26 that year, so 25.
Sheesh. been that long, eh?
It's been that long, 4 long years, man. You know, but I went during when COVID happened. I had hit this. For me, it wasn't a floating in the air. Now what? It was a what in the hell am I doing and what's going to happen kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because when I got offered the job, it's like, all right, you got to move to Chicago. That's fine. You know, I don't have any responsibilities other than myself and bills that I have to pay. So why not just go ahead and go for it? But COVID hit, and there was a lot of nothing to do. I kind of just was in my head, and at the time, I was in this weird relationship, and I wasn't getting any support. So I was questioning myself. I was questioning people around me, and it was like, man, what do I need to do next? So I guess for me, it was kind of different.
Now what?
Yeah, it was a now what, but it was kind of like, how in the hell am I going to get myself out of this rut? Like, I'm doing what I need to do, but how am I going to get myself out of this rut? Because now I feel like I didn't feel any regret or anything like that. It was more so like I made this decision and didn't really think it through. So now I got to do what I need to do to make the situation good, which means the situation wasn't bad. It's just, how do I make it better? So from the moment I moved to Chicago up until now, accountability really didn't set in, because at this point you got to be mindful of who you bring around your circle. You got to look at certain social circles and be like, all right, I don't like the way this person acts. If I hang around this person a lot, then I'm bound to get myself in trouble. I used to be on this whole go with the flow thing. I can't do that no more. So, you know, to me, accountability is a definite requirement. You got to hold yourself accountable. In order to aid, and I'm using this for lack of a better phrase, to fight the demons that you have on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Right. It makes holding yourself accountable, at least for me, makes it a lot easier, because I think the hard part for some people is just saying, yeah, that's my bad. Or just apologizing.
Yeah.
And so with that, there's really no progression forward. And instead of just suffering the consequences for those actions, people just kind of peel it off and be like, all right, whatever. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not doing that. You know, I'm a prime example of that with my decisions that I've made, you know, with certain people in the past. So, you know, adulting, being an adult, you got to hold yourself accountable.